Ashley's going to join from her phone. All right, well, while we are waiting to get started, Taylor, because we have the floor, I would love it if you would just introduce yourself and maybe take advantage of these couple minutes to kick off the session and share a little bit about kind of what you were hoping to start with in the session, and hopefully we'll have our moderator and other panelists here momentarily.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for popping in, Lauren, and everyone for joining the session. So really, I think what was most exciting about our session is we really have kind of the whole value chain of plastics here. So hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Price. I work for Aptar Group, and Aptar is a global packaging company. We create and manufacture innovative dispensing systems for the food and beverage, beauty and home, and the pharmaceutical industries. And so, in addition to myself, we have one of Aptar's customers, Yolanda, who works with Pepsi. And then we also have one of their customers, Ashley from Walmart. And so really what we were going to jump into today is to really talk about, what are our plastic commitments? As we know, earlier in the year, plastic prices dropped when, oil went to a negative pricing. And so really what we were going to talk about today is how can we, how are we responding to that? What's happening in our value chain and all of that. So I can say for myself at Aptar, we're a packaging company. The majority of our packaging solutions are plastic. And so that's great. For incorporating recycled plastics, we're able to, work with organizations like the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the CE100 to increase the recycled content of our plastics, to work in all of these different areas. And so I think really what's exciting is for us, these low oil prices have not affected our commitments. We're still committed to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. We're still committed to all of those commitments, making things more circular, which is great. So this really hasn't stopped us on our commitments. We want to be 100% recycled, reusable, or compostable. We want to increase recycled content. We may have a different way of getting there in the future, but what we're really excited about is our commitments have stayed the same.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor, and welcome Yolanda and Ashley. Welcome back. Has not showed up, but the inevitability of tech challenges in a virtual world. So I think we have two options. I would love, Yolanda and Ashley, you to both introduce yourselves. Either one of you can take the reins and moderate the session, knowing how it was supposed to flow, or I can stay in here and do my best to ask questions. What do you prefer? Ashley, what do you think?
Well, hopefully you can hear me now. I can hear you, and gotta love technology. I'm not near my computer, obviously. I'm trying to get good tele. Why don't I just start by introducing myself, and I think maybe I can help guide the discussions. Why don't we try that? Sound good?
Yeah. I love it. I will pop off a video and I will let you try to guide things, but I'll also be in the wings here to help. And just note, if this totally crumbles, we can reschedule the session for later in the program and do it in its full glory if this doesn't come together.
Great. Thank you so much. So hi, everyone. I am Ashley C. Hall, and I'm Director of Sustainable Packaging for Walmart. It's so nice to be with you all virtually. My role within Walmart is really focusing on engaging our associates, our merchants, our executive leaders, our suppliers, working with NGOs, and of course, engaging with our customers on how we can achieve our aspiration around zero plastic waste and meet our commitments that we've done with Ellen MacArthur Foundation around 100% recyclability, reuse, and compostability, increasing our recycled content, decreasing our use of plastics whenever possible, when they're unnecessary. And we're excited to be on this journey. And high level, what I'll share, and then we'll pass it to the others, is to say our commitments are still going strong. What's happening with the oil prices and what's happening with COVID has not waylaid our work. And so with that, I'll pass it to Yolanda to introduce herself and share her work and commitments. Yolanda?
Hello, everyone. I'm Yolanda Malone. I'm with PepsiCo. And the same thing here, I think for us at PepsiCo, I'll start with our commitments haven't changed either, even during COVID. Our goals are not changing. We're still committed to designing our packaging to be compostable, recyclable, and biodegradable, as well as looking at how we reinvent our packaging. Our ultimate goal is that our packaging never becomes waste in the environment. And so PepsiCo continues to be committed through those initiatives. And we are working and will continue to work with partners and peers and industry so that we can collectively tackle, because it's a big one. It's a big one for all of us to be tackling this challenge.
Fantastic.
So, Ashley.
And Taylor, I don't know if you've already spoken to that.
Yeah, thanks. I'll add a little bit to that. So jumped in a little bit earlier to say Aptar is in the packaging industry, and for us, our aspirations haven't changed either. I think, one important thing to note is, the packaging industry, especially with all of these circular economy principles and topics, it's really become embedded into a lot of companies. It's been embedded into ours as a packaging company. We really called circular economy out as its own pillar. And so even with all of these different changes going on in the external landscape, it has the potential to kind of shift the journey on how we reach those targets. But ultimately, it really hasn't changed the end goal. I think that continuing to work towards targets, we may have to change. Awesome. So I know, going along with the flow
The
of
next
what.
question.
Yeah, you can go ahead, Ashley.
No, go for it, Taylor.
Yeah, I was just saying, kind of going along with that flow, I know we wanted to start with Yolanda to kind of ask her what are some of the ways that her company divorces the circular plastic initiatives from those price shifts. So we've seen price shifts this year, but I think we wanted to talk about how Pepsi.
Yes, no, thank you. For us at PepsiCo, our strategy hasn't changed. Our strategy is still where we're driving, that packaging doesn't become waste. And the one things that I'll share with the rest of the folks that are paying attention that are on this breakout session is, one thing is we may need to look at our tactics. Our tactics may need to moderate in the short term, but what I'll set forth is that our strategy is really solid. And those are the things that we're not deviating from, even in the midst of some of these short-term changes. So for PepsiCo, our goals are still there. We're not letting the oil prices and the different fluctuations in the market sway us from what our long-term vision is. But what I will say, most people in business will need to look at their tactics and how they're adjusting their tactics and being flexible enough to be able to come in and out of these different fluctuations in the marketplace, and making sure that their strategy is sound enough to be able to weather it.
Totally agree with that, Yolanda. And just to add on from a Walmart perspective, one of the ways that we've been really able to continue our commitment is to remind our associates and merchants that you can't claim something as recyclable. You can't claim something as recyclable if it doesn't actually get used into recycled content. And that's a really important aha moment for our merchants and our suppliers. And so it reaffirms their commitment to say, we will get past these low prices and be able to invest moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think also kind of going along with that, talking about, recycled content, another big piece of these commitments are looking at the reusable and refillable solutions as well. And so I think, as we talk about oil prices dropping, a lot of people say, well, maybe we need to shift from recycled content and make things reusable or recyclable instead. And I think, what we've seen as a packaging company is that it's really not an either or. Refillable solutions for us are more of a co-strategy. It's really ultimately up to the consumers and the brands and, our partners to really shift that mindset. But whether we're looking at incorporating more PCR, changing the business model to be more refillable or reusable, I think for us, what's become really important is understanding the trade-offs environmentally. So we do a lot of life cycle assessments to help us understand those different trade-offs. And we really think it's critical to have that understanding and that qualitative foundation as we're making decisions. So, oil prices play a big role in that, but there's a lot of other environmental trade-offs as well. So I think that's another important piece to mention.
No, I'll add to that, Taylor. I would completely agree. I think a lot of the opportunities from the consumer lens really navigates to their behavior, that we're going to have to really find the right mix and partner through. What is the consumer doing? So it could be a reusable model, and how can we learn from those things that really resonate, being really consumer centric, and also partnering with retailers so that it's a holistic look at how consumers are behaving, and even an opportunity to change behavior, as we're seeing happening now during these COVID times with Zoom conferences. So there's a lot of opportunity there as well. But I would agree with you, Taylor.
And just to kind of finalize and say yes, yes, yes to everything that's been shared already. But to add to that, from a Walmart perspective, we really lean into the Pew and systemic research that just came out this summer that shows recyclability, substitution, reuse, composting. Not one solution will solve our issues. We need to work on all of them. And so I think that's critical for companies who maybe have started with recycling to also expand and lean in on those other areas as well.
Agree.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing too that we wanted to share, and kind of switching topics a little bit, is we wanted to give everyone in the audience a kind of lesson learned from what our companies have done in going through this process. So I can start that by really saying, Aptar is a global company, even though we're not the biggest company by far. We have a global impact. We operate in 18 countries. And so for us, it was really important that we understood what was happening across all of our different geographies. And so what that looked like is really understanding the local laws, regulations, and creating partnerships and organizations within all of those different global regions. And so that's been really helpful, especially because of all of those different changes. And so one big lessons learned, I'd say, for companies looking to start on this journey towards circularity or towards, more sustainable plastics, I think it's really important to understand that global landscape and then bring that back into your business. And that could affect, your targets, your goals, and how you operate on that.
Taylor, I'll go next. And so I'll just say that, from my end, in addition to what you mentioned, don't reinvent the wheel, pull from existing resources and talk to others who are doing it. And for those who are doing it, share not only what works, but where you've had troubles. And by doing that, you can help other people avoid, making some mistakes that you might have made along the way, so that we can all move in this journey. As Dame Ellen MacArthur said this morning, we all need to work on this. And personally, that's why I'm so thrilled the U.S. Plastics Pact is another resource that you can leverage.
Yeah, I think for us at PepsiCo, we're actually trying a lot of these circular models, and we partner with Loop Industries. And one of the examples that I'll share out is we tried a refillable Quaker canister over in Europe, and we're also working through Tropicana. And we're learning a lot from what our consumers' needs are and some of their expectations. And so we'll continue to invest in research like that, so we can really understand our consumers better and understand what are their specific needs and how they think about a reuse and circular economy in their own homes.
And Yolanda, one more element I'll add on to that is we piloted in some of our stores refill soda machines. And while that works really well for on the go or single immediate beverages, doesn't work as well right now for 2-liter bottles, right? The fizz goes away. And so that's just an area where it doesn't mean we don't use those refillables, but we need to learn how to make the technology work better for us and the customers.
No, we agree, and we have some help there with some of our beyond the bottle strategy. Ashley, so I'll just throw a little curve in there for you on that. But you're right. Consumers are really looking at how we can still provide them joy and product and safe and efficacy. And so it's really important that we model and we do these studies and partnerships so we can continue to learn, as Ashley said, take our learning so that they can be better, right? So don't reinvent the wheel, as she said before. There's a lot of information that's out there that we can learn from the different consortia that are already there that you may want to join if you haven't joined, and a lot of knowledge to actually share so that as you do your own studies within your own organizations, you're not having to start from scratch. Hey, Susannah, we can't hear you.
And thanks so much for all of your thoughts so far, panelists. It's your job. Just for a quick introduction, this is Susannah Harris. I work with Deloitte Consulting, and I'm often playing an advisory role with companies who are thinking about how to incorporate more recycled content, refillable solutions, and other sustainable and circular solutions into their products and operations. And one of the things we see a lot when we're working with companies through this transformation is that items like packaging are inherently cross-functional and require a lot of different teams to work together to get right and to provide input on how any changes would affect their day-to-day and their metrics that they're looking at. So Taylor, can you to what it looks like to try to, from your vantage point, collaborate with folks in, for example, sourcing and procurement when maybe prices aren't favorable for the recycled content that you're thinking about bringing in, or maybe there's other challenges that you want to work through with them?
Yeah, I think that's such a great piece, especially as sustainability professionals. We're really connecting all of those different pieces within our organization. And so for us, that supply chain, purchasing, procurement group is a key stakeholder for us as well. I think one of the big things that's been kind of an advantage to us is how do you build a plan with visibility in order to really secure your supply chain. And so what we often work with our purchasing teams is on that long-term security so that when there are shifts and fluctuations in the market, it's not a direct hit to our business. So I think that's kind of one important piece as well, is really working with all of those stakeholders, especially in the supply chain, just to look a little bit more forward thinking rather than being reactive when the price shifts hit.
Susannah, I couldn't hear you.
Hey,
I don't know if Taylor, could you?
Yolanda was going to give you a chance to provide, one last bit of, insight or something that you wanted to reiterate from the session before I give folks on the line a little bit more context and further reading for those that are interested.
Yeah, I think for the one thing that I will suggest There are a lot of technologies that are on the horizon and partnerships. As an example, we're working with a French company, Carbios, on new recycling and enzyme breakdown of PET. We're working with Origins. So there are a lot of different consortia and different partnerships that are out there to actually learn from some of the next generation technologies, because it's a long journey. And so we need to make sure that a lot of these technologies for the future, so we don't have plastic as waste, are scalable. And so some of these partnerships are really critical, and they're both peer partnerships, they're technology partnerships, leverage some of the consortia. And so there are things there, as Ashley said before, I'm gonna drain it, but don't start from scratch. There are consortiums out there on recycling, on waste collection. Many different organizations are really trying to help us so that we not only recycle, but so that recycled material has value, right? Because that's the other piece of the value chain. You need to make sure that what's coming out the back end also has a loop that it provides value back. So that was the big one I wanted to make sure that we called out here. Join some of those, understand what's happening, because there are a lot of sharp working groups working through really significant technologies for the future. Ashley?
Couldn't agree more. And the last thing I will say, short and sweet, is if you have the technology or an innovation and you're holding it on to yourself as a company or a supplier, consider open sourcing that and making it more available to more companies and organizations. We all need to be able to invest and work on changing those packages so that we can achieve our zero waste aspiration.
Fabulous. Thank you, all three of you, for chiming in today and managing all the technology and context for this. For those on the line, a couple closing thoughts. One is that GreenBiz did put out an article in May that really hits at the crux of this. The title there was, "Will Recycled Plastics Survive Tanking Oil Prices?" So you can look there for perspectives from even a few more companies and interviews they conducted as part of that article on how companies can divorce themselves from fluctuating prices and really stay steady with their long-term strategies, even if those near-term tactics need to change. So be sure to go read that article if you want a little bit more context on the crux of this issue, and be sure to also take the GreenBiz survey. It's in the chat box. Weigh in on everything you're hearing today, what you're learning, and how you're appreciating all the content. Ashley, Yolanda, and Taylor, there's about, but for today, we'll have to close the session on time, and just look forward to continuing the conversation across the Circularity 20 channels. Bye for now. Thanks everyone for joining.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Bye.